Hello, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of Speculative Sandbox. Before we get into the topic today, which is on cozy fantasies with guest Garrett K. Jones, I wanted to have a little one-on-one conversation real quick to explain and thank you all for continuing to tune in, even though I've been gone for like nearly a year. Life has gotten pretty busy on my end, and I find myself unable to have a guaranteed schedule week over week with guests and finding the time and availability to plan episodes far in advance. So at this time, my guest form is not reopened yet. But when I do find myself able to pursue different topics, I'll be reaching out to people or putting out calls on my Speculative Sandbox Instagram. So if you are willing and able, feel free to follow me there for any opportunities. But this is an indie podcast and I'm trying to keep it going because I love what we have here. But at the same time, take care of my creative process and make sure I have time in my whole life for everything. So, including my day job. So, with that being said, I kind of wanted to give some updates on what's going on in my world. I have two books now. One is currently on submission still with my agent, and that one's very exciting. I do have a film agent who's interested in it and wants to be attached to it once it finds a home. So the trick is finding that home. But we're still working at it, and I've got a wonderful agent in Allie Herring, and she's been a wonderful cheerleader and coach for me. So there's that. Secondly, I just finished writing another book called Rags and Riders. Rags and Riders is about a woman in the Wild West who finds herself in a situation when she lies to cover up her family's secrets. And as a result, there's a whole bunch of chain reaction of events that happen that affect her family and her town. So that's kind of what's going on right now in the writing world. I continue to be busy with book events. Recently, I got to speak with Matt Dinneman from the Dungeon Crawler Carl series. That was a fantastic event put on by Stax Book Club here in Tucson. It was held at the Savoy Opera House earlier this year, had a humongous turnout. Thank you so much to all the people that came, and to some of my new listeners that came from that event. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really had a lot of fun at that one. And then I have an upcoming event in the spring with the Tucson Festival of Books. And there we'll be talking about humor in fiction. And on that panel will be Edward Ashton, Julie Leong, and John Scalzi. So very, very excited for that event. All right. So that is what's going on in my life. And I think we're ready to jump on over to the interview. Welcome to Speculative Sandbox, your audio playground for creative storytellers. My name is Vickie Lan, and in each episode, I and a guest will unpack a trope with an eye for world building, character development, or narrative structures. You can also join the conversation on TikTok and Instagram. For those times when the real world just doesn't cut it, let's get lost in a fictional one. All right, Garrett, we're approaching the end of the year. So, any New Year's resolutions you want to share with us?
I don't make New Year's resolutions because I don't see a point.
Okay.
Either you're gonna do something different or you're not. Like people set all these New Year's resolutions like I'm gonna lose weight or I'm gonna work out more or I'm gonna stop eating, Taco Bell so my, digestive system can recover. And it never happens because, you have that 2 weeks in, you're like, oh, I had this one moment where I had to sleep in and I couldn't get to the gym on time, or, I ate that one donut and I'm off my diet, and or you get drunk and at New Year's and you go and get Taco Bell at the drive-through.
Oh, you
Happens.
already ruined it. Okay, fair enough, fair enough. What about a change or a goal with mindset or creative projects?
Ooh, as far as any creative projects, I am mostly my goal is to get out and do more live events to promote my books.
Okay.
I have one coming up in February that I'm really looking forward to. We're doing the city of Visalia in here in Central California. They're doing it's the first annual, hopefully annual, but first annual Moonlit Revelry Ball. So it's like equal parts fantasy con, equal parts dinner and dance with like, formal fantasy setting.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, it's going to be really really awesome. And so I'm looking forward to it. I got signed up. Another author I follow who's based out of Fresno had signed up, and I reached out. I'm like, hey, are you guys still looking for authors? And they said, yeah. I'm like, I signed up. And then the author that I initially was inspired by, she had to back out because of stuff going on. And I'm like, oh,
Oh.
bummer.
Okay. Well, I love that. It's a good segue in today's topic as well. Speaking of which, my New Year's resolution that I've already started, because if I put deadlines on things, I'll panic, but is to kind of stop the doom scrolling a little bit, get myself off the social medias and like nurture the creative brain. And
Mhm.
so doing a lot more reading. And what I found is cozy fantasy has been a really interesting avenue for that. And not one that I intended to seek out, but one that I stumbled into. So the reason for this topic is, and I've been thinking about cozy fantasies for a long time, but the opportunity presented itself. I'm going to be a moderator at this year's Tucson Festival of Books, and I will be speaking to authors that put humor in their stories. And the book that I ended up reading of this amazing author, Julie DeYoung, who's going to be on the panel, is The Keeper of Magical Things. Hopefully, those watching on YouTube can see this. Um, so you and I were talking about cozy fantasies before I picked this up, and then I just started reading it. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is a cozy fantasy. This is just perfect. So I wanted to bring this to the conversation today. But before we go into that, I want to ask you, what do you like about cozy fantasy, or what drew you to this topic?
Well, I'm just being a fantasy writer in general. I like all things that fall into the genre as much as I can, with the exception of I'm not a fan of romantasy.
Okay.
I think
No Court of Thorns and Roses for you.
no, Sarah J. Maas and Rebecca Yarros, they can go take a hike for me.
Okay.
Uh, if people want to have that, fine, that's great for them. Everyone's got their thing that they like. I'm a big fan that if you're gonna do fantasy, I mean, I don't mind if it's cozy or anything like that because everyone needs kind of a gateway into the genre without it feeling overwhelming. But uh, I'm a big fan of going all in with what you're doing.
Mhm.
I'd like there to be some actual adventure with instead. I don't want it just to be like every chapter is a different romantic tryst. That
Okay.
kind of bores me.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay. So jumping into the cozy fantasy. So this topic has been trending up throughout this whole year. I've been seeing more and more charming book titles on the shelves that are centered around trades work or cozy places. So magical books, bookshops, cafes. The biggest name that I can come up with was Legends and Lattes and Bookshops and Bone Dust by Travis Baldree.
Hmm.
There's also The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune, and then one by Sangum and Dana, and I'm so sorry if I butchered names, The Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping. So really cute, cozy concepts and ideas. And you said you read a story too as well that you were going to bring here today.
Yeah, it was one that was sitting on my Audible list for like 2 or 3 years. It was a free download that I got, and so I made sure I had it actually downloaded instead of just sitting on my library. But it was Camille Pagan's "It's a Wonderful Wife,"
Okay.
which plays off of the same beats, the same plot beats as "It's a Wonderful Life," starring Jimmy Stewart. And instead of it being George Bailey, it's Bailey George. And when she finds out that her aunt accidentally spent $200,000 of their cannery company's money, preventing her from being able to pay her employees on what she thought was going to be a really good marketing strategy for the company, it blows up in their face, um, and she's freaking out about it. She goes home, like she tries to call her best friend. Her best friend, she thinks her best friend's working out, and so she goes home and walks in and finds her best friend working out on her husband.
Oh no.
And it just kind of devolves from there. Like she goes to the bar, gets drunk, kind of wishes, life had been different had she not been born. The whole
Wow.
It's a Wonderful Life thing.
Hmm.
And so she gets caught up like she meets an old friend from school. She ends up crashing out on his couch, to sleep off the intoxication. And come to find out when she wakes up, nothing is the way she left it. Like it's that
Oh.
whole day in the life of what if you never existed. And so like her younger sister um is actually married to the guy that she ended up marrying. He's negligent, she's a drunk. The Her brother-in-law is he's actually not working, so he's kind of abandoned his family after his wife did. So the kids, her nieces and nephews are just like they're living in squalor, and so she's like, okay, she takes the kids over, gets them fed, takes them to her sister, and says, okay, these are your nieces and nephews. You need to take care of them. And so, and it ends really quickly. I mean, the whole audiobook is only like maybe an hour and a half long, if that. And it's a really easy listen. There wasn't as much conflict as I thought there would be given the
Mhm.
source material.
Yeah.
Because there's far more like because the whole thing is like George Bailey in the original he thinks about actually killing himself, and that's where Clarence the Angel comes into play. And um, the idea of Clarence isn't so much that he's an angel, he's just the bartender.
Mm.
And so there's the coziness of it in that it does take place at Christmas time. She does find where she belongs, where she fits in, how things are connected and stuff like that. And there's a nice resolution. It's very neatly packed. Um, and there is a magical element, even if it is subtle.
Hmm. Yeah, I was gonna say it sounds like magical realism in the sense that magic is used as the plot device to get people to like reconsider their life
Mhm.
circumstances.
Yeah.
That's a great story. I love how writers keep reimagining classic stories to make them continue to be relevant for our changing audiences. For the keeper of magical things, I think on the opposite end of that is a cozy fantasy that takes place within a magical realm, and it has magical creatures and magical objects and spell work and stuff like that. But it's very much a quiet sort of magic. It's not really at the forefront. So the things that I saw was, the main driving plot was these two characters have to organize a bunch of like misfit magical objects. They just have to take them to a city or a small little town and organize them there. The main conflict, however, is the two people that are brought together to complete this task. They're people that are like, there's kind of tension between them. And of course, different personalities and how do they mismatch as they overcome different obstacles throughout the plot. And there's a lot of centered focus on creating relationships in a village. In fact, it reminded me very much of Animal Crossing and just,
Mhm.
kind of like gentle storytelling that have that the main focus is people and relationships, even, and it exists within a magical world, but it's very much universal in what it's dealing with.
Yeah, when I was looking up because I wasn't all that familiar with the term cozy fantasy, like I'd heard it, but I didn't know all that it entailed. And so like when I was looking at some of the key characteristics, it talks about like the stories aim to be like a hug inside of a book.
Oh yeah, a hug inside of a book. That's a great way of putting it. And I feel like that's how the marketing tends to be as well. So you see a lot of, centered around aesthetics. You have cozy
Mhm.
coffee shops, you got wintry towns, right? Bakeries, taverns, bookstores. So
Yeah.
aesthetics aside, how would you interpret cozy fantasy as a plot structure? Like strip away all the aesthetics. What is it?
Um, Ultimately, it's a Hallmark movie with dashes of magic and fantasy elements. I mean, I mean, you've got I mean, especially if you've got something where like you've got a very small town, very personal goals involved. The stakes are low, and you've got people who are wanting to open a bakery or rather than saving the world. You've got people who are wanting to fall in love rather than stop some evil despot from unleashing a horde of the undead. Um, and so there's this idea of community of the relationship. You mentioned the relationships before. There's a kind of that slice of life vibe, and despite the whether the characters are human or non-human or anything in between, they're quirky and they're unique and they all fit within kind of a you have your archetypes, of course, but the the story itself is more focused on the plot rather than just the characters.
Hmm. It's interesting too, because with that comes a lot of acceptance and diversity. You've got storylines centered around characters that you wouldn't otherwise see in mainstream commercial publications. You have a lot of queer stories, asexual characters. I see a lot of comfort over conflict, like you were saying. It's like a gentle hug. And frankly, I'm just starting off my holiday break. I just came off of a pretty stressful month at work. And I found it really soothing to read it and know that, oh gosh, here, like you can kind of pick up on beats that would ordinarily kind of get really big. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh no, we're going into this conflict. And then it ends up like surprisingly, the characters in this book, at least the Keeper of Magical Things, the characters are surprisingly mature in how they handle communication and relationships and stuff like that. And it was kind of nice to like, oh, okay, it's not going to be centered around a long-winded miscommunication trope, right? For example,
Yeah.
it's got a nicer, smoother arc. So, without action or high-level stakes that you would find in traditional fantasy, what can an author do to drive the plot?
Well, I think ultimately the plot gets driven by character decisions. And I think just the same with writing any genre, you have to put the characters into a position where they have to make a decision on something.
Hmm.
Limit the options. It kind of goes back to something my high school econ teacher was talking about, that our most precious and scarcest resource is time, because we're always running out of it. You can't get more back. And so he said that scarcity, what it does is it narrows down the options, and then at that point it requires you to make a decision based on resources. And so within the story, whatever the decision is that the characters have to make, you want to make sure, even if it's low stakes, you want to make sure that the characters are put in positions where they are required to make a decision. And that can be something that the author has planned in advance, like steps X, Y, and Z to get the main characters to fall in love, or to open up that bakery or that niche marshmallow shop, or maybe it's to stop wearing flannel altogether. I don't know. Um, but but ultimately the characters need to make decisions, otherwise the plot moves. It doesn't move.
Hmm.
Just the same with life. I mean, your life is going to continue to pass you by until you make decisions to take ownership and agency within your own life. And that's what you want characters to be able to do.
Yeah, I agree with that. And there's something to be said about how these stakes, like, is there such thing as low stakes being too low? Well, not when I feel like it's relatable to the real world, right? So in the real world, these are fundamental skills, right? Relationship building, overcoming conflicts with people, making decisions in their life. I think about how every day you may connect with an old friend,
Mhm.
see an old crush, have anxiety about whether or not you're going to pass a class or get into a school. And so a lot of these things happened in this book. And so it's like is it is there such thing as too low of a stake? I don't think so if it's really presented well and it's something that readers can relate to.
Yeah, I don't think there is such a thing as a that like the stakes, like I said, the stakes aren't going to be something as dramatic as, well, I mean, they will be life altering, but they're not going to be like world altering.
Hmm.
And that really is ultimately the key, because like, for example, if you take a look at Star Wars is ultimately a fantasy story wrapped up in space. And despite all the ins and outs of it, if Luke Skywalker chooses not to pursue C-3PO, if he just decides to not be lazy, or to be lazy and to not pursue R2-D2 and C-3PO out into the desert, he never encounters the Sand People. He never encounters Ben Kenobi. He never makes the decision to sit down and talk with Ben Kenobi. He ends up ultimately getting shot with Owen and Beru, and the rest of Star Wars does not happen.
Mm.
So he had to make a decision that is life altering, but the decision that he makes doesn't actually impact what happens to other people until he leaves the planet and becomes an agent within that. Because like, Owen and Beru, the only decision that they made was, hey, let's buy these droids,
Hmm.
not knowing where they came from, not knowing the history behind them. And there you go.
Yeah.
But the stakes, I mean, you have, again, that's going to be a subjective thing. Even if it's low stakes, when you're dealing with a story like this and you're dealing with something that's character driven, the characters are going to find whatever they're fighting for, whatever they're pursuing is going to be it's going to be subjective for them. Like it's going to be life altering or world altering for them specifically. It may not be for the rest of the town or the rest of the county or anybody else beyond them, but it's going to be a big deal for them. And the decisions they make impact them. And there will be consequences, sure, that impact other people, but ultimately it comes down to how they are affected by the decisions they make and how they're going to live with those consequences.
Hmm. Exactly. Yeah, I can present the argument that a low stakes, cozy fantasy works because at the heart of it, those stakes are what make us human. And you can remove some of the high stakes end of the world stuff and it still works. Whereas alternatively, Jason Pargin said this in my interview with him a couple years ago about raising the stakes at the end of the world because the end of the world as a stake all in itself isn't enough for people to care about. So the classic Independence Day movie with the dog in the car, right? People really, really resonate with that dog, right? And it's little connections here and there in the story, like finding your family and reclaiming your reputation, all like name all those different things. Like that is what feeds the heart and soul of a story, even if you are dealing with the end of the world. So it's like, can you enjoy a movie, a high stakes movie about the end of the world if you remove all of those low stakes but human related plot devices?
Well, and see, and that's just it. You've got when you take a look at those disaster movies,
Hmm.
while you've got a core group of characters, it's always the side stories that are the more interesting, like the dog trapped in the car, or you've got the like the day after tomorrow, another Roland Emmerich film where you've got kids freezing in a library after a debate, and one of them, one of the characters is injured and they need medicine, and there just happens to be a ship frozen in the harbor. You have to climb out onto that ship because while it's not, while they might be injured or cold or something like that, ultimately what they're trying to do is they're trying to save someone. So it would be it's happening to the world, but you care about the individuals.
Hmm.
And that's what it comes down to is how well you can care about those individual characters. And I know I've made the reference back to Hallmark, but that's where I think Hallmark does things really well, even if it is a little cliche and a little formulaic, where they get you to care about these characters, even if they're a cookie cutter composite of every I mean, there's that meme of, Hallmark is on the verge of coming up with a second plot for their Christmas movies. And as funny as that is, the thing is that the reason why these movies make money, why they're able to continue funding these films, is not because they're award-winning artistic projects. It's because they resonate with the audience. They know their audience well and what the audience likes, and it doesn't matter how much they copy and paste the same plot into with different parameters. It's still there's the characters are adorable enough or quirky enough or they're just the right fit to garner that audience to
Hmm.
the point where like um talking about another genre, a cozy mystery. I mean, there's a reason why the Aurora Tea Garden mysteries with Candace Cameron were such a big hit. There's a reason why, um, what is it, the crossword confectionery detectives with Lacey Shea Bear. I have no idea what the actual title is, but like the reason why those films and those series do well is because they fit into that mold. That you get to care about the characters, even if we've seen it done before.
Hmm.
Because it brings that there's something familiar about it that brings people into liking it. To the point where even my dad, even though he jokes about the Hallmark movies, he'll sit down and watch one with my mom. Like
Aw, that's
we're talking
sweet.
about a guy who sits there and watches like old movies from the 1950s and 40s and stuff like that when he was a kid. Um, or he's watching sports all the time, or he's watching some kind of sci-fi action movie, whatever. He'll sit down and watch those with my mom. he'll make his jokes. I'll make more jokes, but it
You
fits
all
in.
feel cozy and cuddly ultimately at the
I
end.
don't. I don't. I use it for cannon fodder, but
Okay.
um, but that familiarity is good because it, like you said, it makes you feel less stressed out when you're going through stressful things. I mean, think about the way that people operate when it comes to binge watching shows. 9 times out of 10, we are going back to shows that we are familiar with. Like when you're having a really rough day or a really rough week or month or year, whatever it is, me personally, I'm falling back on binge watching Friends, or I'm binge watching How I Met Your Mother, or I'm binge watching Community, or right now I just started binge watching through Scrubs again because I'm getting prepared for the new season that's going to be relaunching on ABC. My point is that familiarity breeds comfort because you know what's going to happen. It's low stakes, low stress. Even if there's going to be some emotional beats, you can still look at it and laugh and enjoy it without having to worry about what's going to happen next. Whereas when you're watching something brand new that you've never seen before or you don't know what the story is of it, it's going to be a little bit more intense, a little bit more emotional for you.
So then, does a psychopath character belong in a cozy fantasy?
When the entire town has an economy that lives and dies on the success of a cocoa shop, I say they're all psychopaths.
Okay, let's build our own cozy fantasy now as writers. So,
Okay.
if I asked you, if I challenged you to build your own cozy fantasy, what world would you create it in? What's going on? What's happening in there?
Um, I would want to create something that is it's adjacent to our world, so it's the real world. We have, modern setting, but with fantasy creatures living in it, so orcs and goblins and stuff like that.
Are
So
they friendly orcs and goblins?
I would say there's less of a there's you still get some of that tribalism, but it's less because we've got modern conveyances, we've got the smartphones, we've got the cars, we've got the public transportation, stuff like that. We've got our regular holidays, but then you get the cultural things like whatever orcs and goblins celebrate.
Okay.
Um, and so you can have fun with that because and that's a really nice thing. Like I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons lately, and there's while most of the characters that we've been encountering have been humans or werewolves or vampires, there is a like you go through and you watch a show like Critical Role's The Legend of Vox Machina or The Mighty Nine, and you've got characters who aren't you've got human characters, you've got goblin characters, half orcs, you've got tieflings, you have gnomes and halflings and giants. So there's a whole mix of different beings living in a very cosmopolitan existence, even if it's set in a medieval fantasy. And if you were to take that cosmopolitan existence and place it into a modern setting, a contemporary setting, it still works. You're still going to have some of those issues. You're still going to have some of um, those moments where tribalism kicks in because one reason or another, but you get to see how that world plays out. I mean, have you seen? It's a different genre because it's a fantasy action crime thriller. But did you ever see the movie Bright with Will Smith?
I've heard of it. I have not
It's a
watched it.
Netflix original, so it takes place
Okay.
in a world where magic exists, like elves,
Okay.
magic.
Yes. Hmm.
And Joel Edgerton plays an orc who is brought on as a police rookie, and he's being trained by Will Smith. And Will Smith he's coming at it from being a veteran cop, but he has a prejudice against non-humans.
Mm,
And
okay.
so he has to learn how to work with someone who is not human. And it's kind of an interesting take on how the genre plays out, especially with like the cop drama and all that. So you can still have those elements play in, but when you go in the cozy route, because you got to think Hallmark, so
Mhm.
it's not going to be that big of an issue. The town's going to be a little bit more friendly, a little bit more understanding, a little bit more inclusive. So maybe that Christmas tree farm is run by a dragonborn who
Okay.
looks gruff, but is really a softie at heart.
Mm. Opportunity to have some teachable moments, right,
Right.
in your cozy fantasy. I really like that. Okay, so my cozy fantasy was I had to, there's a story idea I've had in the back of my head for a long time. I don't know if it would come from me
You
though,
should
but
you should write it down.
I I wrote it down. I don't know if if someone else steals it, it's fine. I'm fine with that. So I'm an avid Legend of Zelda gamer. I'm not very
Nice.
serious, but I enjoy it. And I love the side characters. I love when you visit the towns, you've got the sound of wind chimes blowing in the breeze, and there's always a light rain in the afternoon in certain towns, and people are tending to their gardens and stuff like that. And so for me, if I were to build my own cozy fantasy, I'd be a character in one of those little towns dealing with little village issues. And the hero, the sword wielding hero could be in the backdrop. Maybe he has to roll through town every now and then, but my main concern is I've entered a pumpkin pie cooking contest, and I am worried that I won't win it because I want to use the prize money to support my father who's very ill, right? And but along the way, I discover that the people I'm up against, who I first see as foes, end up being friends because they have very relatable issues in their life, and they also have middle to low stakes in winning a pumpkin pie contest. And at the end of the day, we all find out that we can help each other, and the prize money is maybe not nearly as needed when the power of friendship and community come together. However, as a writer, I instantly am like, then the hero rolls through town and gets hurt, and I've got to pick up after him now, and I'm going to go out into the world and fight the big bad. Um, because that's just me as a writer, my personal preference. But that would be my
You could always play that off in that your main character encounters you could always do that spin-off sequel where after getting the pumpkin pie shop going, the your main character helps rescue a ranger who got lost in a snowdrift and gets to nurse him back to health, and
Mhm.
her low stakes big adventure is helping him see that he can love again.
Oh, I love that. I love that. That's better than my other idea, which was the hero rose into town and needs to be nursed back to health, and then you find out he's just a jerk. He's not this great hero that you think he is, and it's a
But
lie.
But let's think about why he would be a jerk. Because if we're going off this idea of teaching him how to love again, what hurt him in the past?
Mm,
What prompted? Because people don't just become rangers because they want to. People become rangers in fantasy because they feel isolated, they feel alone, and so they go off and they do their own thing. And you want to there's usually a reason for that. I mean,
hmm
look at Aragorn in Lord of the Rings. He had no home. He was a human king. He was the rightful heir of Gondor, but he was ousted from his throne. He, spent time living in Rivendell, but he wasn't an elf. And despite the fact that he was loved by elves and he was respected uh, uh, by Arwen's dad, he was not a part of their community. He felt very isolated. So what does he do? He goes and travels through Middle Earth, doing what he can until he is called upon by Gandalf.
hmm So then in this story, we get to the bottom of his we have a therapy session. And this ranger comes to terms with why he's a jerk and finds that there's more to life than whatever hang up he has as a result of being isolated and alone, fighting, killing. He's probably got some trauma wrapped up in there with all the murder. So
Mhm.
hopefully a pumpkin pie contest can be soothing before this
Absolutely. I
character
mean,
turn him around.
everyone needs a good slice of pumpkin pie to help them, assuage their guilt and their pain. I mean, that's why
Perfect.
I eat a whole pumpkin pie by myself every Thanksgiving.
Perfect. Well, Garrett, I think we've addressed everything I wanted to talk about today. So great job on that. Are there any last remarks you'd like to make? Anything you're promoting right now?
As far as promotion, yeah, I'm still going through. I've got I don't know when this is going to air, but I've got a holiday promo going on with my bookstore on my website. It is if you use the code holiday, you'll get 15% off your total purchase. These are books ordered directly from me, and they will be signed and sealed and delivered. I've got my new book out, which is Midnight Playground. In fact, let me Coffee here. Midnight Playground. Hopefully, you guys can see it. It is a collection of short stories that I've been working on for various competitions, and it's a very short read. Most of the stories are 250 to 500 words, but it's got a whole plethora of things. In fact, there is a urban fantasy piece that's more comedy than anything else. It could fit into as a side story for a cozy mystery about. It's about a fire pixie who works a 9 to 5 job in an office, and there's kind of an office space vibe to it. Right up to his manager, who is very much a jerk, and he eventually ends up quitting his job, sets his entire cubicle on fire. But like his
Amazing.
week starts bad and it gets worse. Like he gets to work on time and he's told he's late.
Very
So
nice.
so you could always have fun with that and play around with the tropes and do stuff like that. But yeah, so I'm promoting my books. I do have the Moonlit Festival or Moonlit Revelry Ball in February, and then as always, my channel on YouTube, GKJ Publishing. I've got new content. The creative writing tips that I've been doing this season are focused on mythology and folklore, and so there's a lot out there for people to get information from.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for joining me today. And listeners, thank you so much for your patience because I've been missing. I've been MIA for quite a while. But as I said earlier, I will be coming back intermittently, depending on my scheduling and availability. But we've got some exciting things going on in my other lives. So I'm trying the best I can to balance everything. So thank you guys all for tuning in. I really appreciate your guys' followership and also your feedback and your questions. Keep them coming in. All right. Well, then that concludes our conversation. Garrett, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it. And listeners, until next time.